Hi everybody, it's Joe Cioffi here on this Friday night. It is 6 o'clock Eastern Time. I hope everybody had a great day. We are seeing some changes and some good news as far as I'm concerned with regards to the weather in the east, particularly the northeast, because it looks like we're going to escape without any kind of issues here from the standpoint of this next weather system that's coming across the southern states now, and that's good news. So maybe once and for all we're finally done. Normally at this time of year I would have the utmost confidence that in a statement like that, but given the kind of winter we've had, particularly the last 5 weeks, it wouldn't shock me if something were to appear down the road at some time in the long range. Not that there's anything really specific to look at, but just speaking in generalities. We do have a very active weather pattern tonight that has developed across much of the southern states, and we're going to bring up the Storm Prediction Center's radar with their risk area that's going on this evening. And as of 6 o'clock, you can see a very active radar across Oklahoma, through much of the state of Arkansas, through central Mississippi and northern Alabama. There is a very large area of enhanced risk that is being indicated in the red. And we also have a tornado, actually in the hatched brownish areas. We also have a tornado watch in red and a severe thunderstorm watch that's outlined in the blue that looks like just went up from the Storm Prediction Center for parts of northeastern Texas. And the enhanced risk in the that's inside some of the enhanced risk, and we have the tornado watch covering the rest of the enhanced risk area that goes from northeast Texas, extreme northeast Texas, across the northern half of Louisiana into just about the northern half of Mississippi. So some rough weather going on tonight there. There's a lot less going on to the north, but we still have a fair amount of activity. Rain shower activity in parts of Pennsylvania, some snow up in northern New England, some snow back over through the Great Lakes, and heavy rains, and even the risk of some thunderstorms along the coast of northwest California from Monterey on northward up to the Oregon border. And we've got heavy rains coming inland there as advertised with that big Pacific storm that's in play on the west coast. We do have some watches and advisories and warnings up, so let's take a look at those tonight. The yellow in northeast Texas, as we just indicated, that is all tornado watch area from northeast Texas on through northern Louisiana. Most of central Mississippi. Back on the western flank of this is severe thunderstorm watch, and of course in the darkest blue, I guess that's blue or dark purple, that's all freeze watch. Freeze warnings that are up, and a freeze watch in the lighter blues. Winter weather advisories up for much of Kentucky and southern parts of West Virginia. Up to the north, we have a winter storm watch up for southwestern Minnesota and into the Dakotas, and winter weather advisories north and west from there through the Dakotas and on into northeast Montana. Little smattering of advisories in parts of Wyoming, western Nebraska, and some of the mountainous areas there in western Colorado. West of the divide, we are seeing a lot of flood watches up now in Idaho, along with a large wind advisory area, some high wind warnings, and in the darker greens in California, that's where we have flood watches up with that heavy rain as we showed you on the radar. We can actually bring up, I'm going to bring up the national radar again so we can see some of that severe weather activity close up a bit better. So there we go. And there's that sort of sprawling east-west area of showers and some thunderstorms. Now, that's going to gradually sink further south, and on the southern flank of that is where you're going to have that belt of thunderstorms running east to west going on later this evening and into the first part of tonight. And then, of course, you can see what's going on here in the northeast. The snow up in northern New England. These are rain showers in southern New York State, northwestern Pennsylvania, and then they extend back westward as you get into parts of Ohio and Indiana, start to get into some colder air there, and you see some snow, and snow back up through parts of Nebraska into Colorado and Wyoming. And here's that heavy rain in California. Fairly impressive area here that has moved inland from the Pacific. Looks like the back edge has now made its way further west, at least on this, I'm sorry, further east, at least on this wave. And there's some embedded areas of very heavy rain there moving across northern California and on up into Nevada. So pretty active radar pattern tonight. Not a surprise because of the weather situation that we have. And we will now go to the eastern satellite view. We had a warm front come through here a little while ago, and that warm front triggering off nothing except the triggering off temperatures reaching into the 60s in areas from New York City south and west. Turned out that in some areas had a fairly decent afternoon here. The clouds are rolling in, though, from the west with the next cold front, as you can see the flow from being controlled up in Canada here by low pressure that has moved up in that particular direction. And it's going to be the player throughout the weekend with respect to this system that's going to be impacting the eastern part of the U.S. The surface map shows it pretty well, what's going on. And big high coming down from Canada. That's a pretty strong cold high that is moving southward into the northern plains. This cold air is really doing going to be doing a great job at suppressing everything overall. The cold air gets pretty far to the south, and it's also going to be suppressing the developing storm system out of this that's going to form on the stalled front once this weather front that's running from central Ohio down into southern Indiana, northern Missouri. When that front reaches the coast, it's going to start pushing southward, and you're going to see that high dropping south and then part of it building eastward, and that's going to act as is going to act like a giant weight, forcing any developing low in the Gulf states to move out off the Carolinas and then probably move out east-northeast from there. There's been, of course, we've noted how many times this winter where we've had these coastal lows back up westward at the last minute, and so far from the late afternoon model runs here, we are not seeing any sign of that happening. So the late afternoon model runs did not come back further west. So that is at least good news regarding any kind of last-minute surprise for coastal areas of the northern Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. By the way, here's the severe weather risk for Saturday. Coastal North Carolina, then extending inland into South Carolina, Georgia, and into Florida. The general risk of thunderstorms running up to about extreme southeastern Virginia. And that's really where the boundary is going to be between the cold air and the very warm air that is going to be moving up into the southeast ahead of that developing low and cold front, and a general area of thunderstorms, pretty large area of thunderstorms possible out in the west. Okay, so where are we going with the with all of this as far as this weather event is concerned? Well, we'll take a look. And here we go. So here's our friendly neighborhood GFS for this evening at 8 o'clock. The severe weather evident across the Gulf states, right where the Storm Prediction Center has that enhanced risk of severe weather. You can see the fairly intense precip that's being indicated here in the yellows and in the oranges. The snow back up through parts of the central Rockies, in through parts of Nebraska and northwest Kansas, and the heavy rain that is in California, and then the beginnings of some showers up in the Pacific Northwest. Now, that front passes through. It pushes to the south and stalls. The big high drops down into the Dakotas and begins to spread out, dropping southward and then spreading eastward. So here comes that wave that develops in central Georgia Saturday afternoon, and then it heads to coastal North Carolina by Saturday night. Snow on the northern flank of that in northern Virginia, southern West Virginia, southeastern Kentucky, and into eastern Tennessee. The low runs northeast from there, so by 1 a.m. it's sitting off the North Carolina coast by 100 or so miles, northern flank of snow, maybe touching southern New Jersey, though I think that would probably be light snow. Out in the west, you've got heavy rains, northern California northward into the northern Rockies. But with regard to the system in the east, it just runs out east-northeast and goodbye. And the reason it does that is because while we do have a setup in the upper air that is somewhat similar to what we saw many times this winter, where we've got a strong northern stream with a trough that extends southward from there, and there's a short wave in the southern stream, but it doesn't really get sharp enough soon enough. By Sunday morning, the trough axis is almost to the coast, and by this time, it's already way too late. The coastal low is gone, so that instead of lifting it up the coast, it is really suppressing it and kicking it out to the east and northeast. And I really don't see too much room here for error with regards to the model having, I just don't think that the model's going to have an error so big at this late stage to wind up taking a surface low further to the west. I mean, maybe it clips eastern Long Island and southeastern New England. Maybe it clips southern New Jersey for a brief time Saturday night, but that would be about it. For the vast majority of my area, it's going to be just clouds, and then it's going to give way to mostly sunny skies. Note that the ridge in the west is gone. You've got a flow that's straight in from the Pacific, so the next short wave is moving along. And here, too, how the model has changed into early next week with regards to the system on Tuesday, which many days ago the model was being somewhat dynamic with, or at least suggesting it, but now if you look at the trough, it's just kind of very broad here, not sharpening up at all, just kind of moving right along, and that's it. Now, when we move a little bit longer into next week and beyond, there's some battle between weather models that is setting up. The GFS, by the end of next week, wants to pop a beautiful, nice ridge up in the eastern part of the United States, which would bring some really nice temperatures here, if that's right. You can take a look at the temperature profile. This is Friday at 8 o'clock, but Friday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's got 70s up into central New Jersey and almost to about New York City. Probably winds up being underdone usually in these cases. The models never seem to make it, seem to have it warm fast enough. Reality winds up during this time of year that these numbers wind up being higher, but it does have a very, very nice warm up here in the east if it's right, and that's the big question. And it goes into Saturday with temperatures, look at these temperatures well up into the 70s into upstate New York and New England. And then as we go into Sunday, the warmer air starts to diminish as a colder flow returns for the week of the 17th. And in fact, look, by Monday morning, you've got 20s and 30s again for lows. And for actually, this, by the way, is, Monday morning. And then Monday evening at 8 o'clock, it's not very warm. So I can imagine that it probably, this is a very cold air mass that's coming down. And in fact, when we look at the long range, you're going to find that the models, and it's been doing this for a few days, I tend to agree with this assessment. We are going to see some blocking developing again. Look at what happens here by day 11 and 12, another and 13. A big blocking high is forecast to form south of Greenland, And this sort of puts us, well, it doesn't sort of put us in a blocking pattern again. It does put us in a blocking pattern for when we get toward April 19th on to the 22nd. And the European is sort of on the same page with this. So I think the confidence level of the block coming back is moderate at this point. The teleconnection indices actually show it again today. It's been showing it for the last 3 days. And we can see here what that has. Now remember, we're going into the difference between the temperatures in the first part of April and middle April. In those 15 days, the normals run up by about 5 or 6 degrees at least. So there's it's going to reflexively want to go into the 60s by the time we get to the middle of the month. You know, a 10-degree departure from normal puts highs up in the upper 40s to around 50. But you'll notice that the North Atlantic Oscillation, the NAO, which is going to be positive right up until about the 15th of a month, crashes down to neutral and then starts to go negative in the last 5 days between from the 16th on to the 20th. It showed this the last couple of days. The PNA is going to go negative. The EPO, the East Pacific Oscillation, is going to be positive at this point. So we're going to have to wait. We're going to have to weigh whether the NAO is going to be negative enough to bring all that colder air down. My suspicion is that it probably will be. The European in the long range, by the way, is a little different in how it treats all this, because it is suggesting that the warm-up that is being shown by the GFS may not happen. Or if it does happen, it will be very short. I'll bring you the European upper air here. And we'll run it backwards. But notice, okay, here's our broad trough that swings through here this weekend. The next system on Tuesday, again, doesn't really look all that impressive. And, okay, so you kind of have a bit of a ridge here in the east, but not much. There's a strong upper low being indicated by the European sitting east of right over Newfoundland at this point. If the GFS doesn't quite have that, the GFS had a big ridge here in the eastern part of the United States. This is the new GFS. I have to go to the old one and bring you the time frame. But here's the GFS. We'll go out to Saturday. So this is Saturday on the GFS, okay, with that ridge in the east. In fact, if I bring it back to Friday, here's Friday, okay, on the GFS. Here's Friday on the European. So the European has much more of a vortex in eastern Canada. That's going to probably, that's going to attempt at least to cut off the heating. It will only be able to get so far north. So the European would suggest that maybe it gets mild for about a day or so, and then you already start to get the next cold front and building pressures up in Canada, suggesting that there will be some cold air colder air beginning to press down. So I think the takeaway from this in the longer term is, if you're looking for a prolonged period of above average temperatures, you're not going to be a very happy camper. Okay, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. I think the question is whether it's going to be, are we going to get a few days like the GFS suggests, or are we going to get maybe a day or a day and a half, as the European indicates, and not quite as warm as the GFS? If I looked at the temperature profiles on one of those days where the GFS has readings up into the 70s in New England, the European temperature map, which we can't show, the European temperature map for that same day, I believe it was on Sunday, had temperatures in the 30s all the way down into Northern Virginia. So big, huge difference, 30s and 40s, I should say. So here's Europe, and it looks like, at least from the standpoint of anything extreme, we don't see too much of that. There's a storm that's dropping from the North Atlantic southeastward down toward Spain and Portugal, and that's going to bring some rain into the British Isles early next week, and then it just kind of spins away and sits there, so you get waves of showers, but we really don't see a whole lot of snow anymore across the continent. There is a bit of a cold flow here as we look at Thursday, with a high over western Siberia and over into northwestern parts of Eastern Europe. Cold easterlies, at least on the standpoint of the winds. You can see that the isobars run from Siberia across northern Europe right over England. And when we look at the temperature anomalies here, you can see there's a small area of below average temperatures where those easterlies are, and they extend from northwestern Europe on up into parts of England and Scotland. Looks like the rest of the area is just, close to average. And the rest of Europe looks like there's much above average temperatures from eastern parts of Germany on through Poland and into the Ukraine and into Russia. Meanwhile, it's well below normal as we look in parts of Spain. I'll just go back from the beginning so we can at least get a profile from the beginning of the week. And the weekend, at least, looking like some above average temperatures here, but again, nothing too crazy. With that low dropping the way it is, you're getting that below normal action in Spain and Portugal. That's where the cold shot is. In fact, if you watch the curl here of the anomaly, that is that ocean storm that's moving southeastward into Spain and Portugal. And as we go through, as we said, most of next week doesn't really look all that eventful, cooler than normal in northwestern Europe, and that's some of that is that Siberian air, or what's left of it. The spring is trying to do its thing and warm things up like it's supposed to do, having a bit of a difficult time as it has had this year. Really just an incredibly amazing pattern we've been in. It's mind-boggling that we have been like this. This all began, if you remember, back in February. We had that polar vortex split in the stratosphere, that massive warming that brought temperatures in the polar regions to 40 to 50 degrees above normal, brought temperatures up in the North Pole above freezing in the middle of February, which is just about unheard of. And as a result, it just set the atmosphere in absolute chaos, And we've been spending the last 5 weeks just pretty much unwinding all that chaos. Steve Franco, I see you are on board tonight. Good to see you here, pal. And Nick Cortese, you hit Super Chat. Really appreciate it. I know you want 60 to 70 degree weather. Keep your fingers crossed that the GFS model is right, and you'll have it for a couple of days next weekend. But I'm not 100% sold on it. The pattern is what it is. Jason Schaefer, a bit disappointed over the wave in the southeast and not coming up the East Coast close enough. Don't be. I think we've really had enough of all of this. As far as I'm concerned, 75 inches for me for the season in Central Long Island, enough. And Raymond is back on because he's waiting for severe weather in upstate New York. So give it time, Raymond. It'll all set up eventually. John Trabacchino up in the northern Berkshires in Massachusetts. So good to see you here. I always see you on my Facebook page. You had a little bit of snow, and now your temperatures are up around 40. You've got some more cold air coming in, but maybe the warm-up gets up your way late next week. And I know, Nick, you want the warm weather to come. It eventually does come into Suffolk County on Long Island, but it takes so long this time of year. And I know you're looking at these hot temperature records going into the past. It just isn't happening this time around. You're wishing too much work on me, Jason Schaefer. That you are. You certainly are. Dave Michael, wouldn't really look for too much for snow in Essex County. This front coming through, maybe on the back edge, if it gets cold enough, fast enough, you get a quick changeover. And you see a few flakes flying in the air tomorrow morning before the precip shuts off. But I don't think we're going to see anything from that coastal low. Greenfire 919, good to see you here. Thank you for coming on board. You're Jason Barry on the Facebook show. Yes, I do see you there on the 9:15 Joe Cioffi show, which will be on again tonight at, you guessed it, 9:15 Eastern time. And we are going to then break for the weekend, although you know me, I'm always around doing something somewhere. I may take a break on one of the weekend days. Just kind of need a little bit of time to zone out a bit. So if it looks like everything is going to behave itself this weekend, I may just do that. Priscilla Mayu, noticed that the winds have gotten stronger during the day here in Louisiana. Could that be a sign of how bad the weather could be overnight? I think there will be some strong thunderstorms, Priscilla. As, you know, the watch area indicates it'll be mostly central and north and not so much south. But we'll have to keep an eye on the radar to see how it plays. But I think the biggest risk is, you know, where the severe weather risk is indicated by the Storm Prediction Center is pretty much spot on. But there is going to be some action, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a bit of a tornado outbreak over the next couple of hours going into this evening and into the first part of tonight. Barbara Ryan in Lancaster, PA. I don't think you're going to get any snow. I think you're done. That wave may bring snow up as close as northeastern Virginia, maybe even into the southern flank of Maryland. I don't think it's going to make it up into southeast PA. There's a chance. Let me just double check on something because I'm just going to see what this front. I mean, you know, I suppose that when the front goes by, if there's a little bit of moisture left on the back side, that you could see a change. But when you look at where this wave is and how far south it is, the northern extent of precip never really gets into eastern Maryland and over Delaware and maybe into southern New Jersey, but I don't think it gets further north and west. The broadness of the trough suggests that you are not going to see this thing shift to the west like we've seen with so many weather systems this winter. And again, hopefully it's the last one. Tim, Oceanside, Long Island, Iron Mine 10. Good to see you on, Tim. Zeke 416B. Thanks so much. Really appreciate the kind words about the job I'm doing. I'm trying. By the way, I've been trying to fix the audio problem here. I hope that, you know, I brought the levels down. I've been playing with them the last couple of days, so hopefully the audio is a bit better. If somebody could just give me an indication that the audio is okay, it would be most helpful. Nick Cortez looking at the winter of 2012, 10, 13, 11, warm springs, hot summer. You know, I honestly don't know where this goes. I don't know. Thanks, Timothy. Timothy Veltman, I really appreciate it. I don't know where this goes as far as the summer is, because the rest of the spring and the summer is concerned. If you've been on my live streams and my videos long enough, you know I've said many times that I'm not a long range type of guy. I really kind of focus on the short range and maybe into the very early part of the medium range. You know, going out a couple of weeks. I'll speculate out 2 weeks in advance, but I've never been able to get my head around the long range beyond that. There's just too many variables to deal with. And, you know, from the standpoint of what we're dealing with here, with regards to how all of us that are watching and enjoying the weather, I know that there's a general interest in the question of, well, what's the hurricane season going to be like? What is this going to be like? What is that going to be like in the long range? I don't know. You know, I really don't. And I don't think anybody really does. We can only give it a guess. I just don't see the value of knowing. If I told you right now that next winter is going to be snowless, you know, and I have to tell you, we are way overdue for a subpar year in many areas, not all, but in many areas of the Northeast. We're due for a subpar snow season. We've seen in some places with the snows above average for the last, some places, 6 years in a row. And when you look back at records, it doesn't that just doesn't happen. We've seen stretches of, in some places, of 4 and 5 years in a row of below average snowfall, and then you get one big year, and it makes up for it. So, I mean, if I had to just go on the basis of statistics and the fact that we're just going to eventually revert back to the mean, at some point, we're going to probably have to see some below average snowfall years, plural, to make up for the long streak of above average that has occurred for many areas in the northern mid-Atlantic and in the northeastern U.S. Okay, that's not. I'm not really saying anything here other than what's obvious. And I wish I knew everything, Nick Cortese, but I don't. Again, by the way, just if the audio, if the audio is better, that's good. I just don't want it to be so low that. Okay, you're saying it still clips when I raise my voice. Okay, good. I mean, not good that it clips, but at least I'm getting it, a little bit better. So we'll just keep trying. I'll keep doing some adjusting. Yes, blasphemy. I know, ZEUK. It is blasphemy to express the possibility that maybe we could have a subpar year snow-wise. But when it does happen, I can already imagine the response by some people saying that it'll never snow again because of it, and we know quite well that is probably a very, very silly way to look at it. All right, so James, you said my audio just went too low, so I brought it back up a little bit. Should be okay. Can you hear me okay, guys? Now the audio's too low. I have to just play with it. There's no way for me to really test my audio unless we do it. A stoning! We're going Monty Python on me, huh? Nice. Very good, ZEUK. I really appreciate it. No stone. We're not going to be doing any stoning here. Okay, good. David Michael says it's perfect. I won't touch it. Okay, I will leave it alone. All right, let's wrap it up here, folks. I'm not sure why the clipping happens either. I'm not going to say your name, okay? You who have just pointed out that the clipping, you don't know why the clipping happens. I acknowledge that you have said it, but I am not going to say your name. Fishing in the future, David Fuller. Well, if Sunday is not unreasonable and there isn't too much of a wind, I may try it, but I'm going to probably chicken out, depending on how cold it is. Iron Mine 10, me and Joe Rayo, the onions last night. I don't know what possessed him last night. He ate some onions right before we went on, and I have to tell you, I don't know how I stood it for 30 minutes. Sitting next to him, the smell of onions was so powerful that I couldn't handle it. If you want to see what happened, I did upload that Facebook show last night that Joe and I did. It's on my YouTube library. It's the video before this one. So if you want to check out the antics of what happens between two co-hosts when one of them eats a lot of raw onions before he comes on the air, take a look. Oh my God, it was awful. If he does that again, I'm just gonna get the worst cigar I can find, and if I could, I would smoke it in here. It would probably choke us all to death, but nonetheless. But take a look at that video from last night, and you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. All right, folks. So let's call it a night here. Hope everybody had a great Friday. Hope you have a great weekend. Timothy Veltman, I can't chicken out now. The fish waited all winter to spit my hook out, just as you got that right. I did realize today my New York State license just expired, so I have to run to Dick's Sporting Goods tomorrow and renew my my freshwater fishing license and my saltwater license. So it's something I have to take care of before I head out tomorrow, because for some reason, even though there are only a couple of DEC New York State DEC folks and by the way, they do an absolutely awesome job keeping the fresh waterways clean by making sure that rules are enforced. Always good to see them there. I'm not disparaging any one of them, but it just seems like you guys tend to find me. I go fishing, if I'll go fishing, I'll be all by myself, and I'll have a DEC agent that will then show up. But they are all great. If you do fish, freshwater fish, make sure you have your license with you. That money is well spent by the DEC to make sure that our waterways are stocked, to make sure that it's clean, to make sure people are following the rules, and it's a good thing. All right, folks, have a great Friday night and a great weekend. I'll probably do something over the weekend. I'll schedule it. Delvin, you just showed up. Yes, I'll schedule it at some point. I'll do one tomorrow. I just don't know what time. I need to take a break, and I got things to do. So, I'll do an update maybe sometime during the afternoon or evening, and then maybe I'll take the day off on Sunday. I'll let you guys know tomorrow. Take care.